Have you ever wondered, what's the one bird in India that everyone knows, yet almost nobody realizes what it's secretly hiding? Hang on to that thought, because by the end of this video, you'll have the answer. India is a country of color, chaos, and ancient stories. But look closely and you'll find another India living above the traffic, beyond the crowds. An India written in feathers, from birds that shimmer like gemstones in the Himalayan sun, to forest ghosts humming songs older than empires, to tiny neon hunters zipping through the rainforest like they stole someone's Wi-Fi. This is a world most people never see. But here's the twist. Some of these birds were once sacred symbols. Then slowly, quietly, the world forgot them. Their songs faded under cities, their colors dimmed beneath noise. Some survive, some struggle, some are hanging on by a single branch. Today, we're going to meet them all. The icons, the legends, the show-offs, the survivors, and the ones time almost erased. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's fly through the forgotten India, a sky full of stories, secrets, and colors you won't believe are real. And don't forget the question I asked you at the start, because the answer might just change how you look at India's most famous bird. Ready? Let's begin. You know that question I asked you in the intro, about the one bird everyone in India knows, but almost nobody realizes what it's secretly hiding? Well, here it is, the Indian peafowl, the national bird, the celebrity, the one creature India has practically put on posters, coins, temple walls, everywhere. But do we actually know it? Or have we been too distracted by the feathers to notice the story underneath? Think about it. How many animals can stop a human mid-scroll the way a peacock does? One flare of that tail, and suddenly the world's a fashion runway. Those shimmering blues, greens, bronzes, that giant fan of eye spots that seems to glow even in the shade. It's like nature tried color grading in 4K long before Hollywood figured it out. But here's the twist. The part everyone calls the tail isn't actually a tail. It's a train, over 100 elongated upper tail coverts, each with microscopic, crystal-like structures that bend light into color. No pigments, just physics. Your favorite superhero movie wishes it had that kind of special effects budget. And here's something even funnier. Those feathers aren't for flying. Nope, they're for flirting. Every dance, every shimmer, every slow spin is basically the peacock saying, "Hey, look at me. I did not skip leg day." Meanwhile, the female, the peahen, stares back like, maybe. Keep spinning. Now here's the question inside the question. If this bird is so iconic, so worshipped, so universally adored, why do so many people forget what it actually is? A forest bird, a ground forager, a survivor of predators, droughts, monsoons. Not just a decorative symbol, an ecosystem player. Fun fact, peafowl eats snakes. Yeah, India's national bird is out there day to day doing pest control with a side of bravery. And yet most people only remember the feathers. So here's the mini debate. Is the peacock famous or misunderstood? Is it celebrated or oversimplified? Do we love the bird or the costume? Because as we move deeper into this journey across India, you'll see birds far more endangered, far more forgotten, far more in need of attention, some even more spectacular. Which brings us to our next species, a mountain jewel shimmering in impossible colors. Ready to climb? If the Indian peafowl is India's showman on the ground, then the Himalayan monal is its showman in the clouds. And here's the question that always pops into my head. How does a bird living at 3,000 meters in freezing Himalayan air manage to look like it's dressed for a royal festival? Picture this. You just left the lowland forests of the peacock. You climb higher, oxygen gets thinner, and suddenly, out of a cold mist, a flash of neon blue and emerald green explodes across the mountain slope. That's the monal, a living gemstone. The peacock dazzles, yes, but the monal glows. Its feathers aren't just colorful, they're metallic. Copper on the neck, emerald on the chest, sapphire on the head, a shifting rainbow that changes with every step it takes. Nature basically said, let's make a bird and give it the entire color palette. Now here's something most people never notice. Monals don't just look dramatic, they act dramatic. Males will leap onto a rock, puff up their feathers, tilt their head, and perform this slow, exaggerated strut like they're auditioning for a high-altitude fashion film. Meanwhile, the female stands there, unimpressed, like, nice try, do it again, with feeling. But beneath the glamour lies grit. Monals dig through frozen soil for roots and bugs, survive blizzards, and navigate cliffs humans wouldn't dare climb. This bird isn't fragile, it's fierce, a survivor wrapped in iridescence. Fun fact, in older Himalayan villages, people believed the monal's feathers contained sunlight. When the bird flashed its colors, they said it was releasing trapped light from the sky. Not poetic enough? Some also believed monals could predict storms because they called louder when the air pressure dropped. Built-in weather app, feathered edition. So here's the mini debate I'll throw at you. Is the Himalayan monal India's most beautiful bird or its most underrated? Because while everyone knows the peacock, very few know the monal, even though it looks like it was crafted by a jeweler with unlimited budget. And as we trek from these icy heights down toward the wetlands, our next bird trades rainbow glamour for something entirely different. Height, elegance, and a love story carved into legend. After leaving the glittering colors of the Himalayan monal behind, we step into open wetlands where silence stretches wide and reflections ripple across shallow water. And that's when you see them. Two tall figures standing side by side, perfectly still, like statues carved from mist and sunrise. The Sarus crane. And here's the question that hits you immediately. How does a bird this tall, this elegant, stay so gentle in a world that's anything but? These cranes are the tallest flying birds on Earth. Not swans, not eagles, cranes. When a Sarus stands up straight, it's almost eye level with a grown human. Gray body shimmering under soft light, long pink legs, and that unmistakable red head that looks like it was painted for a sacred ceremony. But what truly sets them apart isn't the height, it's the heart. Sarus cranes mate for life, not maybe next season, not until migration pulls us apart. Life. When one calls, the other answers in a duet so haunting, so perfectly synchronized, you'd swear it was rehearsed for a stage. Two voices rising in spirals, echoing across rice fields like a love song older than memory. And here's a twist most people never hear about. If one partner dies, the surviving crane will sometimes mourn with a stillness so complete, it almost looks like grief made physical. Farmers who see this say the field goes quiet too, as if the land itself pauses out of respect. But despite being symbols of loyalty across India, Sarus cranes are disappearing. Wetlands shrink. Fields grow louder with machines. Their nests, built low on the water, fall victim to floods and stray cattle. A bird once regarded as sacred is now fighting for space in its own homeland. So here's the mini debate. Should a species that represents devotion, grace, and cultural identity really be forced into the background of modern India? Or do we owe them the same loyalty they show each other? Because as we move forward in this journey, the next bird reminds us how fragile beauty can be when nature loses room to breathe. Ready to meet a giant of the grasslands? A bird on the edge of vanishing from the world's memory? Leaving the wetlands of the Sarus crane, we enter India's sun-baked grasslands. A place so wide, so empty, you feel like the sky is trying to swallow the earth. And somewhere out there, moving slowly through the golden scrub, is a bird you could easily mistake for a boulder until it blinks. The great Indian bustard. And here's the first question that hits you. How does one of the heaviest flying birds on the planet manage to be almost invisible? This bird is huge. We're talking 15 to 18 kilograms. Long legs, thick neck, towering stance. A feathered linebacker wandering through the open plains. It looks tough, unshakable, ancient, like it stepped out of some forgotten chapter in Earth's history. But here's the twist. This giant, powerful-looking bird is one of the most endangered birds on Earth. Fewer than 150 remain, Most people in India have never seen one in their life. Some don't even know it exists. Imagine that. A creature big enough to outrun a jeep, strong enough to flush a fox with one kick, yet fragile enough to vanish silently from the world. Bustards live low and slow. They walk miles to feed on grasshoppers, berries, small reptiles. A patient grazer in a world that's racing faster every year. Males perform elaborate displays during mating season, inflating a giant white chest pouch until they look like they're smuggling a weather balloon. Meanwhile, the females stand nearby, completely unimpressed, like, "Really? That's your move?" But the danger comes from something deceptively simple: power lines. This bird's flight is heavy, slow, and straight. When it takes off, its eyes stay locked on the horizon, not the cables stretched above the grass. One collision is often fatal, and in a habitat now cut into pieces, those collisions add up fast. So here's the mini debate. When a species this iconic, this irreplaceable, is slipping away right in front of us, is that a conservation failure? Or a reminder that even giants can fall silently when the world stops paying attention? Because next we meet a bird that proves the opposite. A creature of bold colors, secret forests, and ancient ritual beauty that refuses to go unnoticed. After crossing the dry, wind-carved grasslands where the great Indian bustard wanders like a fading giant, we step back into the mountains. Cool air, mossy trees, and deep Himalayan shadows. And hiding in those shadows is a bird so outrageous, so theatrical, you'd swear you just walked into a festival parade that didn't get the memo it was supposed to be a bird. The satyr tragopan. And here's the question that always sparks in your head. Why does a creature living in such a quiet, misty forest dress like it's attending the world's loudest carnival? The male is a masterpiece of design. Rich crimson body, white polka dots that look hand-painted. And then, the showstopper, two inflatable blue horns that pop out during courtship like he's transforming into a mythical creature right in front of you. Yes, horns, blue ones, that he inflates on purpose. If the peacock is dramatic, the tragopan is downright supernatural. Here's the wild part. When the male displays, he spreads a bright blue and orange throat wattle covered in intricate patterns that look almost like stained glass windows glowing in church light. He shakes, bows, vibrates, struts. The whole performance feels less like a mating ritual and more like he's saying, "Behold, the Himalayas' most handsome wizard." Meanwhile, the female, soft brown, quiet, camouflaged, watches him with the same energy of someone evaluating house listings. Charming, but the neighborhood has leopards. Fun fact, locals once believed tragopans were half-spirit birds, creatures that slip between the human world and the world of myth. With those glowing blue horns, can you blame them? But beneath all that beauty lies a harsh truth. The satyr tragopan is losing habitat fast. Deforestation, grazing pressure, shrinking understory. Its magical displays now occur in fragments of forest instead of endless Himalayan slopes. So here's the mini debate. Is the tragopan nature's most spectacular living artwork, or a reminder that even the most beautiful creatures can vanish quietly if we stop protecting their stage? Because as we descend from these mystical forests, the next bird tells a very different story. A splash of color from the Western Ghats that glows like sunset trapped on wings. Leaving behind the glowing blue horns and mystical energy of the satyr tragopan, we slip southward, into the dripping emerald rainforests of the Western Ghats. The air here feels different, warmer, heavier, filled with the sound of water sliding off leaves. And perched quietly in all that green is a bird so stunning it almost feels like the forest added it as an accent color. The Malabar trogon. And here's the first question that hits you. How does a bird with colors this bold manage to look calm? Most flashy birds are loud, dramatic, constantly performing. The trogon, he sits completely still, like a piece of fine art placed delicately on a branch. Bright red chest, black head, warm cinnamon back, a tail patterned with crisp geometric stripes. It's like someone designed him with a color wheel and a steady hand. But here's the twist. Despite looking like a superstar, the trogon is one of the most peaceful birds in the forest. No screaming, no dancing, no look at me theatrics, just elegance in quiet motion. Trogons feed in this old-fashioned, gentlemanly style. They perch, wait, then dip forward to snatch insects midair with a soft flick of the wings. No chaos, no drama. It's like watching a slow-motion ballet performed in perfect silence. Fun fact, their toes are arranged in a rare pattern called heterodactyl. Two forward, two backward. But unlike woodpeckers or parrots, their configuration is unique to the trogon family. It's one of those little evolutionary signatures that says, yes, we're different, and proud of it. And even though they look tropical, they're surprisingly shy. You'll often hear them before you see them. A soft, repetitive Q-Q-Q echoing through thick forest. Some bird watchers swear the sound feels like the forest whispering secrets. So here's the mini debate. Is the Malabar trogon a hidden gem of the Western Ghats? Or the rainforest's quiet superstar that never asks for attention but deserves all of it? Because next we meet a bird that does the complete opposite. A tiny round burst of color that doesn't hide, doesn't whisper, and absolutely refuses to go unnoticed. Leaving the quiet elegance of the Malabar trogon behind, we follow the forest floor. Darker, damper, full of hidden sound. Leaves rustle, branches twitch. Something small is hopping, but not quietly, and suddenly, a flash. Then another. Then 9 different colors explode out of the undergrowth like a surprise party you didn't RSVP for. Say hello to the Indian pita. And here's the immediate question that pops into your head. How does a bird this tiny pack more colors than a festival poster? Seriously, the pita is barely the size of your palm, yet it looks like someone pressed every button in the paint shop. Electric green wings, cobalt blue tail, lemon yellow belly, a warm orange crown, and a jet black stripe across the face that makes it look like a professional athlete. 9 colors, 1 bird, 0 apologies. But here's the twist. For something so bright, the pita spends most of its life sneaking around the forest floor like a tiny ninja in neon clothing. It hops, pauses, cocks its head, then digs through leaf litter with those strong pink legs looking for worms, bugs, or anything that dares wiggle. And if you've ever heard its call, you know it doesn't whisper. The pita stands on a low branch, throws its head back, and belts out a loud, ringing "Wheat-to-you," so sharp you'd think it was announcing itself on a jungle loudspeaker. Shy in appearance, loud in personality, a very don't judge me by my size kind of energy. Fun fact, bird watchers call it the Navarangi in Hindi, meaning the 9-colored one. And every year during monsoon, this little bird migrates long distances, returning like clockwork to its favorite forest patches, as if checking back into a seasonal hotel. But here's the mini debate. Is the Indian pita the most colorful small bird in India, or simply the most confident? Because it doesn't glide like the trogon, doesn't glow like the tragopan, doesn't tower like the Sarus crane, yet somehow this tiny ball of attitude steals the entire spotlight. And from this mischievous forest jewel, we step into deeper, darker woods, where a different kind of brilliance waits, not color, but voice. Leaving behind the hyperactive sparks of color from the Indian pita, we climb into darker, older forests, places where sunlight slips in quietly and the air feels heavy with secrets. And then you hear it, a whistle, clear, pure, almost human. For a second, you think someone's calling from between the trees. But no, that's the Malabar whistling thrush. And here's the question that instantly hits you. How does a bird that looks so serious sing like a trained musician? Because visually, the whistling thrush isn't loud at all. It's dressed in deep midnight blue feathers, so dark they almost blend into the shadows. But when the light catches just right, those feathers ignite with an electric sapphire sheen that feels like moonlight trapped in ink. Quiet appearance, dazzling glow. But the voice is the real show. This bird doesn't chirp, it doesn't squeak, it whistles. Perfect notes, repeated phrases, sometimes so melodic it sounds like someone practicing a flute in the forest. In fact, locals once called it the whistling schoolboy because its songs mimic a child learning music. Fun twist, these whistles are not random. Each male has his own repertoire and delivers his morning songs with a confidence that would make a pop singer jealous. Bird watchers say they often whistle back, and the bird answers. A duet with a wild singer. Not many species offer that on the menu. And yet, despite the musical talent, this bird is surprisingly shy. It hops along streams, perches low, and prefers staying close to water where it hunts for insects, snails, and the occasional frog, with a quiet efficiency that contrasts completely with its voice. So here's the mini debate. Is the Malabar whistling thrush India's best singer, or its most unexpected comedian? Because if a dark, shadow-colored bird can walk into a forest and suddenly hit a flute solo that stops hikers in their tracks, you have to admit, the personality is bigger than the appearance. And from this maestro of the Western Ghats, we move to another blue-feathered treasure. A rare jewel perched deep in the misty hills of the Nilgiris. A bird with a voice as soft as the thrush, but a color that bursts like pure sky. After the forest concert delivered by the Malabar whistling thrush, we climb even higher into the cool, mist-wrapped plateaus of the Nilgiri Hills. A landscape where clouds slide between trees and the morning air feels like it was filtered through silence. And somewhere in that silence, a small blue spark flickers on a branch, the Nilgiri flycatcher. And here's the question that hits you right away. How can something this vividly blue stay so completely unnoticed by most people? Because this bird isn't kind of blue, it's electric. A deep, velvety, dreamlike sapphire that makes it look like a piece of the sky broke off during a monsoon storm and decided to perch quietly in the forest. But unlike its flashy cousins, the Nilgiri flycatcher doesn't brag about its color. It doesn't dance. It doesn't whistle operas. It just sits there, still, gentle, almost like it's shy about looking this good. The magic happens when it hunts. Flycatchers are tiny acrobats, and this one performs with a kind of calm confidence that feels almost meditative. It watches the air with those dark, focused eyes, waits, then leaps into a perfect mid-air swerve to snatch an insect with a soft snap of the beak. No wasted motion, no chaos, just precision and grace. Fun fact, this bird is endemic, found nowhere else on Earth except the Nilgiri Hills and a few pockets of the Western Ghats. A true local treasure. And yet most travelers walk right past it without realizing they just missed one of India's rarest blues. Here's a twist. Despite being such a gentle, quiet species, the Nilgiri flycatcher is incredibly territorial. Males will defend their favorite branch with a stubbornness that feels almost relatable. Their version of, "This is my seat and I'm not moving." So here's the mini debate. Is the Nilgiri flycatcher an underrated jewel? Or the kind of bird that chooses peace over fame and might actually prefer being overlooked? Because next we step into an entirely different kind of color, a burst of impossible purples, fiery reds, and molten gold wrapped into one humming, glowing little miracle that lives high in the Himalayan rhododendron forests. Leaving the calm sapphire glow of the Nilgiri flycatcher, we climb north again, higher, colder, deeper, into the Himalayan rhododendron forests. And right when the trees burst into red blooms, a spark of living fire darts between the petals. So bright, so fast, you're not even sure your eyes caught it. But they did. That was Mrs. Gould's sunbird. And here's the first question that grabs you. How does a bird this tiny manage to look like it's wearing the entire color spectrum at once? This sunbird is a walking jewel box. Crimson head, violet throat, molten orange back, a shining golden belly, and metallic blue tail feathers that flicker like lit matches when it turns. If someone told you this bird was painted by hand, you'd believe them. But here's the twist. Despite looking explosive, the sunbird is only the size of your thumb. It weighs less than a teaspoon of sugar. That's right. The Himalayas hide a creature more colorful than a festival banner and lighter than your snack. And yet it moves with the energy of a tiny comet. It hovers like a miniature hummingbird, dipping its curved bill deep into flowers to drink nectar with a tongue that flicks over a dozen times per second. To the flowers, it's a pollinator. To photographers, it's a chase scene. To insects, it's a thief with wings. Fun fact, this bird was named after the wife of Edward Gould, a legend in bird illustration. Imagine being so stunning that scientists look at you and say, well, this needs to be named after someone important. Another twist, male sunbirds change color with the light. In shade, they look dark and understated. But when a sunbeam hits just right, they ignite. Almost like the color was sleeping and the morning light woke it up. So here's the mini debate. Is Mrs. Gould's sunbird the most beautiful small bird in India? Or simply the hardest one to believe is real until you actually see it shimmer? Because now, from this little Himalayan flame, we're diving back into the heat of the plains to meet a bird that doesn't shimmer. It glows bright green and slices through the sky like a streak of living jade. From the fiery shimmer of Mrs. Gould's sunbird in the Himalayan blossoms, we drop back into the warm, sun-soaked plains. A place where the air is thick, the sand glows gold, and the sky suddenly feels busier than the ground. Because here, slicing across the sunlight in flashes of emerald, is a bird that looks like it was carved from pure jade, the green bee-eater. And here's the instant question it sparks. How does something this slim, this elegant, make hunting bees look like a martial art? Because this bird doesn't just catch insects, it plays with them. You'll see it perched on a wire or a thin branch, tail streamer waving like a green flag, eyes locked onto the smallest shape in the air. Then it launches. Fast, precise, graceful. A perfect swoop, a perfect turn. And suddenly the bee is in its beak before the insect even knows it's been drafted into the food chain. But here's the twist. Bee eaters don't get stung. Not because they're lucky, but because they're strategic. They smack the bee against the perch, again and again, pressing out the venom like a chef preparing ingredients with serious confidence. Only then do they eat. Nature's version of safety first, and to look this good while doing it, that's just showing off. Green body, long black eye stripe, a touch of blue on the throat, two elegant tail streamers trailing behind like brushstrokes from a paintmaster. Simple at first glance, but the longer you stare, the more layers of color appear. Fun fact, bee eaters are highly social. They nest in colonies, digging long tunnels into sandy banks, and they often feed together in little squads that look like a green aerial dance team. If birds had group choreography, this would be it. And here's a mini debate. Is the green bee eater India's most stylish aerial hunter, or its most underrated? Because while bigger birds dominate headlines, this tiny emerald missile keeps the balance by eating thousands of insects that would otherwise make outdoor life pretty annoying. From this flying jewel of the plains, we rise into the open skies again to meet a bird whose every flight looks like a streak of blue lightning and every landing looks like it belongs on a postcard. Leaving behind the emerald streaks of the green bee eater, we move toward the heat lines of the Indian plains, where sunlight hangs heavy, flowers burn bright, and something small flickers between them. So fast you're not sure if it's a bird or a piece of metallic light breaking loose. That flash? The purple sunbird. And here's the first question you'll ask. How can a bird this tiny shift colors like it's carrying a pocket full of rainbows? Because when you see it in shade, the male looks almost black. Quiet, simple, nothing dramatic. But the moment a sunbeam hits, boom, it ignites into metallic violet, sapphire blue, oil slick green, and sometimes even a flash of gold depending on the angle. It's like nature installed RGB lighting on a bird the size of a thumb. This little guy doesn't hover as perfectly as a hummingbird, but it comes close, wings buzzing, body suspended, bill dipping into a flower with surgical precision. Nectar is the mission, speed is the weapon. But here's the twist. The purple sunbird isn't just a nectar drinker. It's also a stealth insect assassin. When babies need protein, the adults switch to mosquito hunter mode, snatching flies and tiny bugs mid-air, like they suddenly remembered they have a second superpower. Fun fact, during breeding season, the male gets so shiny that even other birds stare. Humans too. More than a few nature photographers have called it the bird that makes the camera panic. Colors this bright, confused sensors. And honestly, can you blame them? And despite the glam, their nests are handcrafted miracles. Hanging pouches made from cobwebs, petals, paper scraps, and anything else they can steal from gardens, walls, laundry lines. Yes, sometimes your sock. These architects do not apologize. So, here's the mini debate. Is the purple sunbird India's tiniest show-off or its most misunderstood superhero? Because behind the glow and sparkle is a bird working non-stop to pollinate flowers and eat pests while looking cooler than anything it technically needs to. From this pocket-sized burst of ultraviolet fire, we glide into open skies again, toward a bird whose blue lightning wings and dramatic dives have made it a symbol of India's wide, wandering horizons. Coming from the ultraviolet flash of the purple sunbird, we step back into the open sky, hot winds rising, dust shimmering, and suddenly, a streak of electric blue cuts across the field, like someone swung a neon sign through the air. That's the Indian roller. And here's the question that hits you instantly. Why does a bird this incredibly colorful decide to sit on the world's most boring perches? Telephone wires. Seriously, you'll see it glowing like a gemstone on a rusty pole above a dusty road, almost like it wants you to ask, hey, what are you doing here? Because this bird is India's low-key acrobat. When it takes off, the wings explode into shades of turquoise, indigo, and royal blue. So vivid you'd swear someone turned up the saturation in real time. Locals call it the Blue Jay of India, but honestly, that's underselling it. This thing looks like it was painted by a storm. And during the breeding season, the Indian roller goes full daredevil. Males launch into rolling dives, twists, flips, and mid-air tumbles that look like they were choreographed for an aerial stunt show. That's actually how it got its name. Not from rolling on the ground, but rolling in the sky. Here's the twist. Those dramatic aerobatics, they're not for hunting, they're for flirting. A sky-written love letter. Meanwhile, the female sits on a branch like, okay, nice flip, but can you do it again? Fun fact, rollers are expert bug hunters. They scan fields from their perch, spot a cricket or beetle, then swoop down with that signature blue flare and snap it up before returning to their lookout post. They're basically the patient fishermen of the sky, but with better lighting. And while they're celebrated in Indian folklore and even used in traditional festivals, their biggest strength might be adaptability. City, farm, village edge, roadside tree, the roller just shrugs and glows anyway. So here's the mini debate. Is the Indian roller India's most cinematic bird? Or is it simply the one that knows how to look spectacular in the least spectacular places? Because from this blue-winged stunt pilot, we now glide into a bird whose beauty arrives not from aerobatics, but from a tail so long and elegant, it turns every flight into a dance. From the stunt-filled sky trails of the Indian roller, we drift into quieter forests. Sunlight dripping through leaves, air warming with that soft golden haze. And then you see it, or rather, you see something gliding between the branches, long white ribbon-like shapes flowing behind a tiny body. You're not hallucinating. That's the Asian paradise flycatcher. And here's the first question that hits you. How does a bird this elegant, this impossibly delicate, move with so much confidence? Because the male, especially the white morph, looks like someone tied silk streamers to a snow-white comet and let it dance through the trees. Those tail feathers can be more than twice the length of the bird. Two pure, weightless strands that ripple behind it like calligraphy drawn in midair. But the twist? This feathered angel is actually a ruthless little insect hunter. It sits on a low perch, bobbing that glossy black head, black crest raised like a crown, eyes locked onto the tiniest flicker in the air. Then snap. It launches, twists, grabs a fly mid-flight, and returns to the branch as if nothing dramatic just happened behind those streamers. It's grace with bite. Fun fact, this bird changes colors depending on age and sex. Females are rufous with shorter tails, Young males start rufous too, then slowly gain longer tails and deeper contrast until one day, the transformation is complete. The white morph emerges, like a character unlocking their final form. Here's an even cooler twist. Despite looking so fragile, the Asian paradise flycatcher is a long-distance migrant. Some populations travel all the way from Central Asia to the Indian subcontinent, crossing mountains, storms, and forest after forest, with those ribbon tails flowing behind them like banners in a parade. So here's the mini debate. Is the paradise flycatcher India's most beautiful bird in motion, or simply the one that proves elegance doesn't have to be slow? Because after watching those white tails carve through the forest, you realize beauty isn't just about color, it's about movement. And speaking of movement, our next bird carries the forest's heartbeat in its wings and uses one of the most spectacular tools in the animal kingdom, a giant yellow casque built for drama, power, and ancient forest rituals. From the floating ribbons of the Asian paradise flycatcher, we push deeper into the rainforest, where the canopy grows darker, older, and every sound echoes like a secret. Then suddenly, a whooshing roar passes overhead. Not a plane, not thunder, a bird. A bird big enough to sound like weather, the great hornbill. And here's the question that hits you immediately. How does a creature this massive, this ancient-looking, move through the treetops with such authority? Because when a great hornbill flies, you don't just see it, you feel it. Each wing beat is a deep, rhythmic whoomp, whoomp, like a drum that tells the forest, step aside, royalty in transit. This bird is enormous, a heavy, muscular frame, wings broad enough to cast shadows, and a beak so large and curved, it looks like something straight out of a fossil exhibit. But the showstopper, that giant yellow casque on top of the beak, a helmet, a crown, a built-in megaphone of pure attitude. Here's the twist. The casque isn't just decoration. It amplifies calls, helps during aerial duels, and might even act like a built-in resonator that deepens the hornbill's booming voice. This thing is part instrument, part armor, all drama. And if you think the males look impressive, wait until you hear how the females nest. She enters a tree cavity and then seals herself inside with mud and droppings, leaving only a narrow slit. She stays there for weeks, molting, incubating eggs, raising young, while the male delivers food like a feathered butler, making non-stop door-to-door service trips. Talk about commitment. Fun fact, hornbills are one of the forest's most important gardeners. They eat big fruits, fly long distances, and drop seeds in new places, literally planting the next generation of the rainforest. Many of India's tallest trees owe their existence to that giant yellow beak. So here's the mini debate. Is the great hornbill the rainforest guardian or its king? Because it already has the crown, the royal entrance, and the booming voice to match. And from this colossal figure of the canopy, we zoom into a completely different kind of hunter. Smaller, sleeker, and armed with a precise, needle-sharp bill that can turn a splash of turquoise into a lightning strike. Leaving the thunderous wing beats of the great hornbill behind, we slip into warmer, quieter woodlands, places where the trees aren't ancient giants, but everyday companions of village roads and city parks. And perched in one of those branches, looking like a thoughtful old philosopher with a giant curved beak, is a bird most people walk past without realizing they're staring at a member of one of India's most iconic families, the Indian gray hornbill. And here's the first question that hits you. How can a bird belonging to such a dramatic, colossal lineage look so subtle? No neon yellows, no giant casque, no thunderclap wing beats, just elegant grays, soft browns, and a long charcoal beak with a modest little casque on top. More eyebrow than crown. But don't let the muted colors fool you. This hornbill is a specialist of everyday forests, the survivor, the adapter, the one that figured out how to share space with humans without losing its identity. It glides between trees with slow, deliberate strokes, calling out a dry, nasal cock, cock, cock that sounds like someone laughing through a wooden flute. Not as booming as its giant cousin, but unmistakable once you know it. Here's the twist. The Indian gray hornbill is one of the most important seed dispersers in semi-urban India. It eats berries and figs, flies across gardens, parks, and scattered trees, and plants new forest life everywhere it goes. City planners may build the roads, but this bird quietly landscapes the future. And like all hornbills, its nesting behavior is part magic, part engineering. The female seals herself into a tree cavity, leaving only a narrow slit, a tiny window through which the male delivers fruit after fruit after fruit, like a committed partner in an intense long-distance relationship measured in inches. Fun fact, these birds have mastered life in the margins. Too wild for full urbanization, too adaptable to stay hidden in deep jungle. They occupy that in-between world where parrots screech overhead and scooters buzz underneath. So here's the mini debate. Is the Indian gray hornbill a quiet urban hero or the most overlooked member of one of India's grandest bird dynasties? Because from this understated philosopher of the treetops, we now streak back into pure color, a ribbon of bright green that dives, swoops, and hunts with the precision of a tiny flying blade. From the quiet, philosophical calm of the Indian gray hornbill, we glide into a very different kind of Indian neighborhood, one where the mornings start with chatter, color, and pure attitude. Look up at almost any city park, village orchard, or old banyan tree, and you'll see flashes of bright green slicing through the sunlight like tiny feathered laser beams. The rose-ringed parakeet. And here's the question that hits you fast. How did this little green comedian become one of the most recognizable and unstoppable birds in India? Because parakeets don't just live in India, they occupy it. They own balconies, telephone wires, rain trees, and sometimes even your mango stash. They fly in synchronized groups, land in noisy clusters, and talk nonstop like they're hosting their own morning show. The males are easy to spot. Sleek emerald feathers, long elegant tail, and that signature black and rose collar that looks like a stylish scarf. The females skip the scarf but keep all the attitude. Here's the twist. This bird is smart, really smart. It picks up human phrases, recognizes faces, remembers feeding spots, and has problem-solving skills that sometimes feel a little too advanced. There's a reason escaped parakeets have formed wild colonies in London, Paris, Tokyo. They simply refuse to fail. But in India, this is their home turf. Every morning you'll hear that sharp ringing kiki as flocks burst out of trees like confetti cannons. They raid fruit trees with zero apology, often hanging upside down while nibbling guava like acrobats on break. Fun fact, rose-ringed parakeets are one of the few birds to have been kept as companions in ancient India for thousands of years. Royal courts prized them, sages fed them, and poets wrote about their mimicry. They were the original talking pets long before pet stores existed. So here's the mini debate. Are rose-ringed parakeets adorable neighborhood characters or mischievous green troublemakers who know exactly how charming they are? Because from this chaotic burst of city-friendly brilliance, we head into the rhythm of India's semi-urban wildlands to meet a bird with emerald feathers, red brows, and a call that sounds exactly like a hammer hitting metal. From the lively green chaos of the rose-ringed parakeet, we move a little deeper into the canopy, into warm branches, sunlit leaves, and a rhythm that pulses through India's cities, villages, and old fruit gardens. At first, you think it's construction noise, a tiny hammer tapping metal. Tonk, 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 steady, sharp, echoing through the heat. Then you look up and find a round, green, red-browed bird sitting perfectly still, like it's hiding its tools behind its back. The coppersmith barbet. And here's the immediate question. How does a bird this small make a sound that feels like someone forging iron? Because when a barbet calls, it rings through the air with mechanical precision. Tap after tap after tap. So perfectly rhythmic you could mistake it for a metronome tuning the forest. But here's the twist. That hammering isn't actually hammering. It's the bird's voice, a vocal trick, a built-in drum machine. No metal, no tools, just a tiny throat doing stunt audio. And visually, this bird is a walking color palette. Green body, red forehead, yellow eye patches, black outline around the face like it hired a makeup artist for crisp detailing. It looks like a miniature festival mask with feathers. Barbettes are cavity nesters, and they chisel their own homes into tree trunks with impressive persistence. Tap, chip, carve. They're tiny carpenters with spectacular taste. Even in bustling cities, they choose old fig or mango trees and quietly sculpt their future apartments out of solid wood. Fun fact, they're fruit fanatics. Figs, berries, custard apples, guavas. They'll swallow whole fruits, fly off, and plant seeds across wide areas in ways humans could never replicate. They are city gardeners disguised as drummers. And here's the mini debate. Is the coppersmith barbet a musician or a craftsperson? Because it shapes sound, shapes trees, and shapes forests. Yet most people only notice the tapping. From this melodic little carpenter, we glide toward a much louder hammer. A bird of yellow flames, black stripes, and a head that flashes red like a warning light every time it strikes a tree. From the soft, rhythmic tonk-tonk of the coppersmith barbet, we move into a louder workshop of the forest, a place where the sound isn't delicate tapping. It's full-on construction, sharp, fast, explosive, rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. And there, clinging to the trunk like a tiny feathered fireball, is the black-rumped flameback. And here's the first question that pops into your mind. How does a bird this small manage to sound like it's renovating the entire forest? Because this woodpecker doesn't whisper, it announces itself. Bright yellow, back that glows like a streak of sunlight, sharp black stripes running down the face, and a brilliant red crest that flicks up every time it hits the tree, like a warning light saying, "Stand clear, high-speed drilling in progress." When it drums, the entire trunk vibrates. It's not random noise, it's communication, territory, flirting, and sometimes pure artistic expression. Each burst is a coded message, a Morse code written in wood. But here's the twist. That powerful drumming comes at a cost. If a human tried slamming their head against a tree 20 times a second, well, that wouldn't last long. But the flameback, it has a shock-absorbing skull, a reinforced beak, and a tongue so long it wraps around the back of the head like a built-in seatbelt. Evolution went full engineering mode on this one. Fun fact, the black-rumped flameback actually prefers half-rotten trees. Not because it's lazy, but because those trunks hide the best insect buffet. Beetle larvae, ants, spiders. This bird is the pest control technician you didn't know your forest hired. And despite living in noisy neighborhoods, villages, groves, city edges, it's surprisingly shy. If it notices you watching, it'll slide to the far side of the trunk like a cartoon character avoiding eye contact. Peekaboo behavior, but with style. So here's the mini debate. Is the black-rumped flameback nature's coolest carpenter? Or just the forest's noisiest neighbor with a wardrobe so bright it's basically a safety vest? Because from this fiery woodpecker, we step into a burst of green feathers and bold energy. A bird that brings color to cities, charm to parks, and attitude to every branch it lands on. After leaving the blazing yellow sparks of the black-rumped flameback, we slip into a quieter corner of India's green neighborhoods. The mango orchards, old banyan trees, and shady city gardens where the air smells like fruit and warm leaves. And sitting there, almost perfectly spherical, staring at you with big sleepy eyes, is a bird that looks like someone molded a feathered plush toy and then painted it in the softest greens, the brown-headed barbet. And here's the question that hits you fast. How can a bird this round, this gentle-looking, be one of the loudest alarm clocks in the entire subcontinent? Because if you've ever been outside on a summer morning, you know its voice. A repetitive, unstoppable "Cutroo, cutroo, cutroo," that sounds like a wooden drum being played by someone who absolutely refuses to take breaks. This sound carries across neighborhoods, echoing off rooftops, drifting through mango branches and making anyone who wanted to sleep in reconsider their life choices. But here's the twist. This barbet is not flashy like its cousin, the coppersmith. No red brows, no neon mask, no metallic call, just a warm brown head, green body, and a look that says, "I'm comfortable with who I am." The brown-headed barbet is a fruit connoisseur. Mangoes, yes. Jamun? Absolutely. Guavas? Don't even get it started. It doesn't nibble. It devours with the enthusiasm of someone who found the dessert table before the main course. Fun fact, its beak is surprisingly strong. While it prefers soft fruit, it can chisel into wood to carve nests, slowly, methodically, turning dead trunks into cozy apartments lined with wood chips and warm feathers. A surprisingly serious engineer inside a surprisingly round package. Here's another twist. Even though it lives right next to humans, it stays calm, polite, and slightly confused looking no matter how chaotic the surroundings get. Scooters honk, kids shout, crows argue. The barbet just keeps eating fruit and calling kutru like it's narrating life from a hammock. So here's the mini debate. Is the brown-headed barbet India's chillest garden resident, or its most persistent early morning vocalist masquerading as a fuzzy green melon? Because from this mellow fruit lover, we step straight into the shimmering wetlands, toward a tall, elegant giant painted in white, black, and pink strokes that look almost too artistic to be real. Leaving the fruit-filled calm of the brown-headed barbet, we step into a world carved by wind and water, India's great wetlands. Wide, shimmering plains where sky and water blur, where buffaloes stand half-submerged, and where something tall, white, and impossibly elegant stands perfectly still in the shallows. The painted stork. And here's the first question that always hits you. How does a bird this large look like a watercolor painting that decided to go for a walk? Because up close, the painted stork is a living canvas. Pure white wings splashed with black patterns, a tail stained in bright pink like someone dipped the feathers in cherry ink, and that enormous yellow bill. Long, curved, unmistakable. Designed for one thing, fishing with quiet precision. This bird hunts slowly, wading knee-deep, bill half open, sweeping it side to side under the surface like a blindfolded samurai, practicing ancient movements. The moment a fish touches the inside of the beak, snap, instant reflex, zero hesitation. But here's the twist. Despite its calm, almost meditative appearance, the painted stork is a noisy neighbor during breeding season. Colonies explode in chatter. Dozens of storks build nests in the same tree, each pair yelling, clattering, flapping, and arguing over sticks like a neighborhood meeting gone wrong. And their nests, messy, chaotic, oversized, basically the avian equivalent of, "We'll clean it later." Fun fact, their pink feathers come from carotenoid pigments in their diet. More crustaceans equals brighter pink. Yes, these birds literally color up based on what they eat. Flamingos get all the fame for this. But painted storks have been doing it with less drama and more style. And while they look serene and effortless, their world is shrinking. Wetlands are vanishing. Water pollution rises. The perfect feeding grounds they evolved for are disappearing under concrete, farms, and drought. So here's the mini debate. Is the painted stork a fading masterpiece in a landscape that no longer remembers how to hold water? Or is it the resilient survivor that will adapt as long as we give it even the smallest chance? Because from these pink brush giants of the marsh, we move to a bird even taller, even more iconic, and glowing in a shade of pink the entire world instantly recognizes. From the watercolor calm of the painted stork, we walk deeper into the wetlands, into a world of soft wind, glassy water, and distant shapes moving like slow, elegant brushstrokes across the horizon. And then, you see them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Tall, pale pink silhouettes standing in shallow lagoons like a dream someone forgot to erase. The greater flamingo. And here's the first question that sparks instantly. How can a bird that looks so delicate, so ballerina-like, survive in some of the harshest waters on Earth? Because flamingos don't choose gentle lakes. Oh no, they choose salty flats, alkaline wetlands, places where barely anything else wants to live. Their secret weapon? A specially adapted bill, a pink upside-down filter machine that sifts tiny shrimp, algae, and brine organisms with the efficiency of a living water purifier. Here's the twist. Their pink color isn't natural. Baby flamingos are gray. They only turn pink because the pigments, carotenoids, in their food literally dye their feathers from the inside out. So yes, flamingos are walking proof that you are what you eat. And when they move, it's choreography. Long necks curved like question marks, thin legs pacing the shallows in slow unison, bodies glowing softly in the sun as if lit from beneath. At sunrise, they look like lanterns. At sunset, like embers floating on water. But the real spectacle happens when they take off. A running start, long legs splashing, wings unfolding into deep shades of black and red. And suddenly a bird you thought was fragile becomes a powerful, determined flyer headed across continents. Fun fact, flamingos often stand on one leg not for style, but to conserve body heat by keeping one limb tucked close. And somehow they balance like that for hours. If humans tried it, we'd last maybe 20 seconds. Yet their world is in danger. Wetlands shrink, salt pans dry up, coastal zones turn into construction sites. Flamingos can travel far, but nowhere is safe if the landscape keeps changing. So here's the mini debate. Are flamingos symbols of elegance or warnings painted in pink about what we're losing? Because from these tall dancers of the water, we head back to solid ground to meet a bird that doesn't glide or wade. It strides with purpose and screams louder than its size suggests. After watching the greater flamingo glide across pink-tinted water like a floating lantern, we return to firm ground. Grasslands, riverbanks, dry fields where the earth cracks under the sun. And there, pacing like a tiny security guard on duty, is a bird with long legs, sharp eyes, and a voice that absolutely refuses to be ignored. The red-wattled lapwing. And here's the first question that hits you. How can a bird this elegant have the personality of a neighborhood alarm system? Because the moment anything steps near its nest, the lapwing explodes into frantic shouts. Did you do it? Did you do it? Did you do it? That's the call. And trust me, once you hear it, you never forget it. This bird doesn't hide, it warns. Loudly, repeatedly, with full confidence and zero hesitation. Look closer, and the bird is actually stunning. Velvet black head, white throat, brown wings, and a bright red, fleshy wattle near the eye that looks like it was designed by a makeup artist who wanted something bold but tasteful. Long yellow legs add the final touch, like it's walking around in stylish boots. But here's the twist. Despite looking dramatic, the lapwing nests on bare ground. No tree, no burrow, no shelter, just a small scrape in the dirt where its eggs rely on camouflage and the adult's nonstop vigilance. And when predators show up, the lapwing becomes the actor of the century. It pretends to be injured, dragging a wing, wobbling, limping, luring the predator away from the nest with Oscar-level commitment before flying off perfectly fine. That's not just survival, that's strategy with flair. Fun fact, their chicks hatch fully capable of running, tiny, fuzzy, adorable, and sprinting like they have bus tickets. Seeing a lapwing family move across a field is like watching a very cute escape mission. So here's the mini debate. Is the red-wattled lapwing the noisiest protector in India, or the bravest little actor willing to risk everything for its eggs? Because from this bold guardian of the grasslands, we jump straight into speed and color, toward a bird that zips over water with a flash of turquoise wings and a spear-like bill designed for precision strikes. Leaving the noisy confidence of the red-wattled lapwing behind, we follow the shimmer of water, irrigation canals, rice paddies, ponds glowing under sunlight. And perched on a lonely branch above it all, wearing colors bold enough to stop traffic, is a bird that looks like it was designed by someone who refused to pick just one shade of blue, the white-throated kingfisher. And here's the first question that hits you. How does a bird this brightly colored manage to stay perfectly still until the exact millisecond it needs to strike? Because the kingfisher is the definition of calm before the storm. You'll see it perched motionless, turquoise wings glowing like stained glass, chestnut head shining warm in the sun, and that brilliant white throat patch that looks like a superhero emblem. But the eyes are locked in, focused, laser precise. Then, boom, it launches. A blur of blue, a streak of color, a dive so fast it almost disappears. And suddenly it's back on the branch, fish clamped in that long, dagger-like bill, like the whole thing was just a well-practiced magic trick. Here's the twist. Despite the name, this kingfisher isn't married to water. It hunts lizards, insects, crabs, frogs, and even the occasional small snake. This is not a picky eater. This is a whatever moves, I'll handle it kind of bird. Fun fact, the kingfisher's bill isn't just sharp, it's aerodynamic. That shape lets it slice through water with almost no splash, the same physics that inspired designs in Japanese bullet trains. Yes, technology borrowed from a bird. And if you think this bird is all action, wait till you hear it call. A loud, trilling kek 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 that echoes across villages, marshes, and backyard gardens like it's announcing its own arrival. But here's where the story deepens. Habitats are disappearing. Polluted canals, shrinking wetlands, disappearing tree perches all threaten a bird that once had endless places to fish. Yet it keeps adapting, keeps hunting, keeps flashing those impossible blues against a world that's losing color. So here's the mini debate. Is the white-throated kingfisher India's boldest fisher, or its most versatile little predator hiding behind a pretty face? Because from this blue-winged hunter, we rise back into open fields and village rooftops to meet a bird that brings music at dawn, confidence at dusk, and a story woven into generations of Indian homes. From the electric blue dive of the white-throated kingfisher, we return to village rooftops, backyard gardens, and quiet evening courtyards. The places where India feels intimate, lived in, familiar. And perched on a low wall or the corner of a tiled roof, tail flicking with sharp confidence, is a bird whose song once echoed through nearly every Indian morning, the oriental magpie robin. And here's the first question that lands in your mind. How did a bird with one of the most beautiful voices in India somehow slip out of the spotlight? Because this bird sings. Not chirps, not whistles, sings. Melodies that rise and fall like classical notes, phrases that stretch across rooftops, soft runs at dawn that feel like someone warming up for a concert. Older generations used to say, if the magpie robin sings in your courtyard, no music teacher is needed. Black and white plumage, crisp and simple. The bird looks like it's dressed in a permanent tuxedo, ready to perform at any moment. It hops with attitude, perches with confidence, and flicks its tail like a conductor cueing the next movement. But here's the twist. For a bird so deeply woven into cultural memory, its presence has quietly shrunk. Urban noise drowned it out. Concrete took away nest spaces. Exotic species competed for food. And slowly, that familiar morning melody faded from places where it once ruled the air. Yet the magpie robin is no quitter. It survives in city edges, old gardens, temple groves, even abandoned lots where a few shrubs cling to sunlight. It adapts, improvises, persists, a musician refusing to leave the stage. Fun fact, on this bird is famously territorial. A male will sing loud, long, and aggressively to defend his chosen tree or rooftop corner. Romantic? Yes. Polite? Absolutely not. Its love songs double as eviction notices. So here's the mini debate. Is the magpie robin India's forgotten songster, or the quiet hero waiting for us to remember that music belongs in mornings, not just playlists? Because from this soft-voiced survivor of human-dominated landscapes, we enter wilder terrain, toward a raptor with fierce golden eyes and a taste for snakes. From the soft, emotional song of the oriental magpie robin, we step back into wilder, rougher lands. Dry forests, rocky hills, tangled ravines where silence sits heavy on the branches. And from somewhere above, a sharp, piercing whistle slices through the air. Not a tune, not a melody, a warning. Look up, and there it is, perched on a thick branch, broad wings folded neatly, head crowned with bold feathers, eyes burning gold. The crested serpent eagle. And here's the first question that snaps into your mind. Why does a bird this calm look like it's holding back the power of a storm? Because unlike the dramatic dives of kingfishers or the non-stop commentary of lapwings, this eagle hunts with patience, stillness, precision. It waits, studies the ground, reads every movement in the grass until the moment is perfect. Then, a silent glide, a sudden strike, and the serpent in its talons never stood a chance. Yes, this eagle specializes in snakes, cobras, kraits, rat snakes. Dangerous or harmless, it doesn't matter. Its thick scales around the legs act like natural armor, and its grip is strong enough to pin a snake before the reptile can even coil. But here's the twist. Despite the fierce diet, the crested serpent eagle is surprisingly shy. It rarely soars high like other raptors. Instead, it moves between perches quietly, almost humbly, as if avoiding unnecessary attention. Fun fact, its call is famous across India. A long, whistling, almost human "pai" that echoes through forests like a referee blowing a warning whistle before anyone even knows what's wrong. Another detail many miss, when sunlight hits its wings in flight, you'll see bold white bands flashing like coded signals. These stripes help eagles recognize each other in dense forest canopies where sound travels far, but visibility stays low. So here's the mini debate. Is the crested serpent eagle India's quiet forest guardian, or its silent executioner keeping the balance from the shadows? Because from this sharp-eyed ruler of the mid-canopy, we now drift into twilight, toward a tiny owl with oversized curiosity, round yellow eyes, and enough confidence to challenge birds twice its size. From the golden-eyed intensity of the crested serpent eagle, we slip into the quiet edges of dusk. That moment when the sky fades to blue-violet, crickets warm up their evening soundtrack, and the air feels thick with stories. And perched right in the crook of a banyan branch, staring at you with giant yellow eyes that look both surprised and mildly judgmental, is one of India's most charming night watchers, the spotted owlet. And here's the first question that pops in your mind. How can a bird this tiny, this cute, act like it owns every abandoned building, every roof corner, and every backyard tree in the subcontinent? Because the spotted owlet has confidence, comedic levels of confidence. It pops its head out of hollows like, "Oh, hi, you're back again. This is my branch. Move along." Its expression always looks like it's asking a follow-up question you didn't prepare for. Small? Yes. Innocent? Absolutely not. This owl is a bold little predator. It snatches beetles, small rodents, lizards, basically anything foolish enough to wander under moonlight. It hunts with rapid, silent dives, then returns to its perch puffed up proudly like it just saved the neighborhood. Fun fact, spotted owlets are extremely social. Unlike many owls that prefer solitude, these little dynamos live in pairs, family groups, sometimes even clusters of neighbors sharing the same old ruin or hollow tree. It's like an owl apartment complex with shared gossip, shared meals, and probably shared judgments about humans. And here's the twist. Their calls aren't the classic spooky owl hoots. They chatter, squeal, chirp, squeak, sometimes sounding almost playful. It's owl comedy hour from 7 p.m. onward. Despite being widespread, their world is tightening. Old trees are vanishing. Urban lights confuse their night vision. Even abandoned corners, their favorite real estate, are being replaced by concrete. So here's the mini debate. Is the spotted owlet India's cutest night guardian, or its bravest little survivor holding on to the shrinking edges of the evening world? Because now, after 27 species, after deserts, mountains, forests, rivers, villages, and moonlit ruins, we've reached the moment the intro promised, the question you were meant to answer. So, after crossing 27 wings, 27 stories. What did we really see? India, a land of 1,000 cultures, 1,000 colors. But above all of it, a sky full of lives most of the world has simply forgotten to look at. We met giants who walk like ghosts across shrinking grasslands, singers who once woke entire neighborhoods at dawn, hunters shaped by mountains, dancers painted in impossible blues and reds, and tiny survivors carving out a life in the cracks of cities and forests we barely notice anymore. And now we return to the very first question. The one bird everyone knows, but almost nobody realizes what it's been hiding. The answer wasn't the feathers, it wasn't the beauty, it wasn't the fame. It was a reminder that every bird, even the most iconic, belongs to an ecosystem we're losing piece by piece. If the peafowl's forests fade, the peafowl fades with them. If the wetlands dry, the stork and flamingo disappear. If the old trees fall, the owlets fall with them. So tell me, after seeing these 27 forgotten species, which one made you stop, look, and feel like the world still has miracles left? Drop your answer below, because the sky remembers its stories, and maybe it's time we do too.